Welcome everyone to our third video in a series of videos on switch assessment. We have moved into looking at specific possible switch locations on our clients' bodies to provide them the most independent access possible. To put this in context, I would encourage you to watch our first video that talks about assessment criteria and how to determine an optimal switch placement. For today, we're going to focus on possible switch placements around the head and also around the mouth itself. I'm Michelle Lange. I'm an occupational therapist in the Denver, Colorado area, and I work quite a bit in switch assessments with the clients that I work with to access things such as communication devices, power wheelchairs, and more. So let's jump on in. So again, this is part of a series, and we are in our section of the series looking at potential switch hierarchy, a hierarchy of locations, focusing today on the head and the mouth. So around the head, there's actually quite a few places we can place a switch to meet that individual's needs. Again, meeting the needs or requirements of an optimal switch site as well. So we can place a switch by the side of the head, and depending on that individual, that client may either use a rotational movement towards that switch or a lateral flexion movement towards the switch. For many clients, rotation is easier. The challenge is if I rotate my head to hit a switch, there's a good chance I'm taking my eyes off the prize. I'm not looking at my communication device anymore, or my tablet display, or where I'm driving. So if possible, I will encourage my clients to develop more of this lateral flexion sort of movement. Another challenge with rotation is you can see if you put your hand by the side of your head, it's possible to turn and never access that switch at all. I might just move right past it. But this is where geometry comes in handy. Instead of placing the switch perfectly parallel to the head, we can angle it just a little bit. And now when the client turns their head, they can hit the switch quite readily. So it's very important to analyze the angle of movement our clients are using and match that with switch placement. We can also place a switch by the cheek. The advantage of the cheek is that for a lot of clients now I can feel it. I might also see it some. But for some clients, if they have a rooting reflex present, they may turn towards that switch as a part of that reflex, not as a part of volitional control. I can place a switch around here, the temple area. The challenge with this is that always seems to be a client who's wearing glasses, and it's going to skew the glasses as it contacts the arm of the glasses. Or if it's a small switch by the temple area and the client turns with force, they could actually injure their eye. So I am more likely to move back more above or behind the ear. Just on the side of the head, once the client gets used to that placement, even if they can't see it, they can feel when they contact the switch, and if it's a mechanical switch, particularly hear some auditory feedback, a click when they activate the switch. So we're going to start with a movie. This is Brady. I've worked with Brady for a very long time, and he uses a switch placed by the right side of his head. It's a spec switch, and it's mounted on some swing-away hardware of a Stealth Products head support. He has this connected to his communication device, and also in the picture here is Jill Tolman, who is a speech-language pathologist who works with Brady and who I have had the privilege of working with for a number of years. Let's see how Brady does. Okay, Brady, you are on camera. What do you want to say, man?
Yeah, that's good. Hey, Brady. I have the computer.
I'm going to move around the other side of you, bud, because your screen isn't showing up over there. There it is.
Would you like to write more?
And that is Anne, Brady's mother. You're listening, careful. I'm going to pause this for a second. Brady's vision is quite impaired. He has significant cortical visual impairment, and he also has a lot to say. So in the pad that's placed by the left side of his head is an embedded speaker, and he is listening to his auditory cues, and when he hears what he wants, he makes a selection.
Where's Get for the phone? Oh, you want to do something new.
Hi, Matthew.
Okay. Do you want to write on the computer, or is it time for something different? Huh. Write a sentence. He. Okay, so are we talking about Papa? Are you saying that he got a new phone?
And as you can see, Brady has said quite a bit already. He has a very extensive vocabulary. He's very adept at using his communication device, even though he really can't see it at all. Slowly, he learned where his vocabulary was. It was added in very methodically, and again, he's done quite well. He uses rather erratic looking movements of his head, but this switch placement has worked very well for him over the years. He has a very rare genetic disorder. Okay, Brady. Other placements by the side of the head. Here's some other examples. On the left we have Mark, and he has a jelly bean switch also mounted to a Stealth Products head support on this swing away assembly. Now, the jelly bean is kind of big for this placement, but that was Mark's preference at the time. He really wanted to see and feel this switch. It's mounted just in front of his cheekbone. To the upper right, we have another young man, Joseph, and he is using a spec switch. It's a little hard to see underneath the mounting hardware, and it's also mounted to a Stealth Products head support. And you can see it's above his ear by several inches, and this is working well for him. And then at the bottom, we have AJ. He's using a jelly bean also by his cheekbone. Now this is on a universal switch mount because this was during an assessment and we weren't yet sure where a switch would be positioned. The Jelly Bean can be a good switch for trying in various locations. Eventually we went with a smaller switch for him. You can see he also has a pad by the side of his head. Now for AJ, he was having some difficulty finding the switch, not laying on the switch, having difficulty with release, or not double hitting the switch unintentionally. By placing the pad there, it gave him some additional stability and a place to pivot off of to access that switch. So let's watch another brief video clip. This is I'm blanking here. This is Chauncey, and at the time he's very small. It's a little hard to see because of his dark hair, but he has a black AbleNet spec switch also mounted off of his head supports, one of my favorite ways of mounting those switches, and we'll see what he does.
And buy.
Good job, Maddox.
Might have an extra.
Try and buy.
But you still have the back.
Well, I guess that switch was actually red. It's just hiding under that gorgeous hair of his. But he is also listening to his choices. He has visual impairment as well and is doing very, very well.
And
This is Spencer, and this is another example of being able to mount a switch off of a head support. Now, this particular head support from Stealth Products is called their Ultra. They have a number of different head supports, and you can see on the picture on the upper right that Spencer has both a lateral facial pad to provide some lateral support to his head and also a spec switch. Spencer, like AJ, pivots off of this switch, or off of this pad, sorry, it gives him more stability, so he can pivot off of that pad to hit the switch. It works very well for him. You can see that that rod, the metal rod from where the switch is mounted, has a wrap around it. That's to contain the cables, and that can be a nice feature as well.
Kind of a training time.
This is Austin, and we were just trying to find a switch slot for Austin, and we have been trying. This is Kiana, and she is using a switch underneath her chin. It's possible to place a switch under the chin, by the side of the chin, and then the client may choose to use either jaw movement or head movement, either inflection or rotation. In her case, she uses a very slight jaw movement, occasionally neck movement to access her switch. On the left side, you can see she has a microlight switch mounted on some lock line underneath her chin because we needed a little extra length, and this has actually worked very well for her. She has another switch mounted over her left shoulder, and we'll revisit Kiana in one of our subsequent videos when we're talking about placement in that area. On the right, we can see that we initially tried this microlight on a swing away bar from Stealth off of her head support. However, it wasn't quite long enough, so that's why we went to the lock line. But let's watch a video of her accessing this switch.
All right, go ahead and show me. There you go. Perfect. Such a rock star. Key, you're doing good. You are.
Hi, how are you?
Doing good. How are you? Gucci is key. Yeah, you still haven't told me what I am Gucci means.
So that's just a brief video of how Kiana is doing with the switch. Kiana has a brain injury and again has very small movements, not a lot of force, but enough force to activate this very sensitive microlight switch.
All right, go ahead.
Other less used sites around the head include behind the head, the forehead, the eyebrow, and eye blink. Now, why are these used less than others? Well, it's because even though behind the head is actually a very common location for power wheelchair driving, namely the head array, one of our more common alternative driving methods, it can be a tricky location for a lot of our clients because they might get stuck on this location if they have increased tone and that extension kicks in. And so for a single switch site particularly, this isn't always as common a location. Also, if I just want to rest and put my head back on my head support, I might accidentally activate the switch. It's important our clients have a position of rest. It is possible to put a switch right in front of the forehead, but I now have to drop my head forward and release, and that can be a difficult movement. But I have had one client in the past who did very, very well with that placement. Another location is the eyebrow. It's possible to place a sensor type switch above the eyebrow, and so a client would grimace or look surprised, raise their eyebrows, and that would activate this very sensitive sensor switch. Now, sensor switches at the eyebrow and infrared switches like this one that capture eye blinks are momentary switches. It's not possible to execute a sustained switch activation with eyebrow or eye blink switches, and so these are not used for power mobility where sustained access is required. Also, there's a degree of vibration that occurs in power wheelchairs that can accidentally activate those switches as well. So we've talked about a number of locations around the head. Now we're going to specifically talk about switch access at the mouth. So it's possible to use a switch, a pneumatic switch called sip and puff. And sip and puff is most typically used with power mobility, but it is possible to use a single sip or a single puff as a standalone switch as well. Now, these are not operated by breath control, but by the ability to regulate the air pressure within your mouth. And to do so, the client has to have good lip closure, so air doesn't escape out of the lips, and also a competent palate. That basically means that the air won't escape out of the nose. And this is a problem for people with diagnoses like ALS. So sip and puff is an option. Another option is the tongue. It is possible to place a switch in front of the tongue for the client to push, or it's even possible to place a switch by the side of the cheek, and the client can push their tongue against the side of the cheek to push the switch. I had one client who had very good tongue control but really couldn't turn their head, and that's what we did. We placed a mechanical switch on the other side of their cheek, and I had another client whose only movement after a very severe traumatic brain injury was protruding forward, and that's where we placed a specialized switch that could handle that moisture. It was fully sealed and could be well cleaned. So thank you for joining us for this video in our series. I hope it was helpful to you, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out and contact me. Thanks very much.
Thank you for watching this webinar. For more information on the ATP Education Program, please visit our website at atp.nebraska.gov or email us at atp.education@nebraska.gov.